Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Middle-earth. In today's episode, we'll be talking about Sauron. Now Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor, is often depicted as a red eye surrounded by fire, and we see this especially in the movies. But was this his true form? Or did he also have a physical body? Now during the First and Second Age of Middle-earth, Sauron was a shapeshifter, and he often used the fur form to trick and deceive his enemies. He did this with Eonwe in the First Age, and with the Elves of Eregion and the Númenóreans during the Second Age. His shape-shifting ability wasn't limited to humanoid creatures either, as he is known to have taken the form of a werewolf, a serpent-like figure, and even a vampire during his lifetime. During the Second Age, Sauron was taken prisoner by the Númenóreans, who were part of the race of men. While he was their prisoner, he corrupted them, and his actions ended up causing the destruction of their island, Númenor. Sauron didn't escape unscathed, however, and his body perished and his spirit fled back to Mordor, and after this event, he couldn't take a fair, beautiful appearance anymore, and thus he took the shape of a dark, terrible lord. The next time we see Sauron is during the Battle of the Last Alliance, when Sauron was defeated once again and his finger cut off. Now after this in the films, we only ever see him as a red eye, but is this a correct depiction, or did he still have a physical form? So if we look at the books, there's actually a lot of evidence that suggests that Sauron did indeed still have a body. So we're first going to look at The Hobbit, which takes place before Lord of the Rings. Now in it, Sauron is stationed in Dol Guldur, and he's using the name of the Necromancer. Now Dol Guldur ends up besieged by the forces of Lórien and Galadriel, and during this event Sauron flees. And unless he had a physical form, these seem like a very odd choice of words. Now Tolkien does describe how Sauron looked as a necromancer, and he says he appeared in the form of a tall humanoid, dark and menacing. But whether this was a physical form or just a projection is up to debate. Now we're going to look at evidence from the Lord of the Rings. So Sauron learns of the location of the Ring, of the Shire, and of Baggins when Gollum is kidnapped and tortured in Mordor. Now it's written that Sauron was personally overseeing the torture, and Gollum mentions how he had 4 fingers on his hand. Now this missing finger is because Isildur had cut one of Sauron's fingers off during the Last Alliance. Anyway, from this we can gather that Sauron had a hand at least, if not a whole body. In one of his letters, Tolkien confirms that Sauron did indeed have a physical form in the Third Age, and I quote, "In a tale which allows the incarnation of great spirits in a physical and destructible form, their power must be far greater when actually physically present. Sauron should be thought of as very terrible. The form that he took was that of a man of more than human stature, but not gigantic." In another of Tolkien's letters, he discusses what would have happened if the Nazgul had reached Frodo before he could destroy the ring. Now the quote is very long, and thus I'll copy it in the description for those of you who are curious and want to read it, but I'll just summarize it for now. Anyway, to cut it short, he stated that the Nazgul would have first addressed Frodo as Lord, and they would have convinced him to come outside to gaze at his new kingdom. They would then have tried to tell him to follow them to the Tower of Barad-dûr, but if he refused, Sauron himself would have come down for him. Now this again is evidence of Sauron's physical form, because if Sauron could come down to him, it's suggestive that he did have a body. So now that we can safely say that Sauron did indeed have a physical body, why did he never appear in the books or films to fight? Now despite not having the ring, Sauron was still very powerful at that time, and so at face value, it does seem a bit odd that he didn't lead his armies. However, this is explained in the books, and in fact Denethor, the steward of Gondor, actually talks about this, and I quote, "He will not come, save only to triumph over me when all is won. He uses others as his weapons, so do all great lords if they are wise, Master Halfling. Or why should I sit here in my tower and think, and watch, and wait, spending even my sons? For I can still wield a brand." This shows that Sauron was happy to just wait for his armies to choke out the forces of the West and defeat them this way, without having to attack or risk his own well-being. One must consider that during the Last Alliance, the siege of Barad-dûr took 7 years, and Sauron only came out to the fight at the very end. It is not like him to fight at the forefront, instead he is a commander, schemer, and what matters to him is the victory at the end of the day. Now the Red Eye that we see in the films isn't just an imaginary creation of Peter Jackson. In the books the orcs bear the symbol of the Red Eye, and they even refer to Sauron as the Eye, because they are forbidden to use his name. Frodo also sees Sauron's Eye in the Mirror of Galadriel, and when Frodo and Sam are in Mordor, they glimpse Sauron's Eye, and I quote, "One moment only it stared out, as from some great window immeasurably high, there stabbed northward a flame of red, the flicker of a piercing eye. The eye was not turned on them, it was gazing north, but Frodo, at that dreadful glimpse, fell as one stricken mortally." There are many other quotes in the book that talk about the Eye, but I think we got the point, and it would also just unnecessarily prolong this video. But for those of you who are interested, I'll leave them in the description also. There is one point, though, that I think it's important to mention, and it's that Sauron's Eye is also mentioned in the Silmarillion, which takes place before the Last Alliance, where it's said that the Eye of Sauron was terrible and few could endure it. Now this is before he lost his body, and thus it shows that his eye was always a prominent feature of his, even before all the events that took place. Now, considering all this, I think we can't argue with Tolkien himself that Sauron did indeed have a physical form during the War of the Ring. The real question is about the eye. Now when it comes to the eye, I don't think it was metaphorical. Instead, I feel that Sauron still retained some form of his shape-shifting abilities, and from his standpoint on Barad-dûr, where he stood and watched the rest of Middle-earth and planned his strategy, the form of an eye would have been ideal. But again, this is just speculation, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this, so if you have an opinion, please leave a comment below. Anyway, this wraps up the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like, and if you don't want to miss more content such as this, subscribe. As always, if you want to give some feedback or disagree with me or agree with me, leave a comment below. I really enjoy reading them. I hope to see you all in the next video, as you join me once more in exploring the wonderful world and lore of Middle-earth.